Hi everyone, welcome to this podcast, the latest in our Life in Lockdown series, primarily looking at what it means to be a Christian during this COVID-19 lockdown period. But today we're going to be talking about a topic which isn't necessarily specific to this time, is actually probably more difficult during this time. We're going to be talking about what we sometimes call social action or mercy ministries, which I guess could be defined as ministries where we are looking to simply show God's love to people, generally people who don't know him. And I am joined today by three lovely individuals, Amanda, Catherine and Pete, who are going to be talking to us about some of the ministries that they are involved with and why they bother giving up their time and their effort to do these things. I'll start off by getting them to just introduce themselves. So Amanda, just in a couple of sentences, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I suppose the important thing when I'm talking to youth is to define myself by my children. So I am Isaac's mum, and he'll be horrified if he's listening to this now. So Isaac's mum. I'm on the staff team at Cornerstone, so you probably have seen a bit too much of me on your screens recently. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Catherine.
I'm Catherine. I feel I need to define myself by my children now. So I've got two young children they're too young to be a part of any of the youth groups just yet, but I've got two little girls, and also married to John, who you will know because he leads the team, who leads the church, and I also work for Safe Families, and we're going to talk a bit about that later.
Fab. How about you, Pete?
I'm Pete. I'm married to Lucy. Some of the youth might recognise me. I used to help out with Plunge. I recently stepped down just to have a bit more time to do night stop and just some other things. But yeah, so we'll come up to that in a little bit.
Great. Okay, so Pete, why don't we carry on with you then? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what ministry you are specifically?
Yeah, so myself and Lucy, we are volunteer hosts for an organisation called Night Stop. So the basic idea is that for one reason or another, I guess you tend to have young people between the ages of 16 and 25 who can find themselves homeless for a short period of time, and that may be for a variety of reasons. Sometimes kind of family issues at home, kind of family breakup, or sometimes they might be kind of refugees in this kind of come in this country and they don't have a kind of permanent location, or whatever the reason. And what Night Stop aims to do is just kind of provide them with temporary accommodation, just kind of set them up with like host families so that they can kind of have a kind of bed for a night or a couple of nights, and just make sure that they're kind of they don't find themselves ending up having to kind of be on the street for that period of time where they're kind of getting themselves sorted out and kind of getting back on their feet, really.
Amazing, great. Okay. Catherine, how about you? What are you involved with?
Well, I am a volunteer and I work for a charity called Safe Families, and we're a Christian charity who support families in local communities. We work in Nottingham City, and we really believe that families shouldn't be doing life alone. And so one of our goals is to bring hope and connection to families, particularly families who are under pressure or facing crisis for really any reason. And we bring hope and connection by linking families to volunteers. So volunteers who are either become like a family friend or might even help host children sometimes, to be the kind of friends and family that perhaps that family doesn't have. So yeah, that's what I do. I was a volunteer first and now I work for the charity.
Okay, so you link up families who need help with people who are willing to provide it.
That's exactly right.
Fab. Okay. And Amanda, how about you? I know your role is slightly different.
Yes, so many of you know that I lead the children's work at Cornerstone, which I'm still doing at the moment. But Katrina, who some of you will know, is going to be joining us in September to take that bit of my job off me. And it's going to free me up to do some other things, one of which will be, I will be the person on the staff team that spends quite a bit of time thinking, how might I help individual Christians at Cornerstone to get involved with projects like Safe Families and Open Homes and others? And also, how might we as a church show God's love through Mercy Ministry? So I suppose I'll have a bit of a communication job and a gathering people job and a signposting job. So yeah, that will be my part of my new job starting in the autumn.
Great. And do you want to just tell us a little bit about some of the ministries that Cornerstone is currently involved with?
Yeah, so there are probably three big ones I can think of really that you might not know about because you're busy being at school and sixth form in ordinary times. So one thing that we have is we actually have a debt advice centre at Cornerstone. So if you hear people talking about CMA, it's Cornerstone Money Advice. And this is open like 2 days a week in some of our rooms. Some of our rooms that are used for Bible workshops or youth on a Sunday morning turn into places where people can go for free and get help if they're in debt or that they're a bit worried about their money situation. And the team that do this, they do it voluntarily and they're all Cornerstone people. And it's absolutely free and anyone can use it. So it's not for people at Cornerstone, although there are people at Cornerstone that have been helped. It's for anyone that hears about it and picks up the phone and says, can I make an appointment? That's one thing. We also, we teach English 1 day a week. Now you might think, well, is that Mercy Ministry? Is that social action? But actually, again, we do it for free. And for people that are new to the country, not having good language skills is a real barrier to being able to survive. So actually, many churches teach English for free. And we do consider that a Mercy Ministry. And the other thing is something which, again, Catherine's very involved with, and it's our Tots and Toys. Now, you might not think of that as being a Mercy Ministry, but again, Tots and Toys is a place where, people can come along and they can make friends. So Tots and Toys is for people with preschool age children, and we have all sorts of people that come along, and some of them probably wouldn't have any other friends with young children if they didn't come to Tots and Toys. And they meet people that want to get to know them, want to help them in their parenting. So I would actually consider Tots and Toys part of that group as well.
Great, that's really exciting that all of that is happening. Okay, so it might be that some people listening are instinctively really excited by Mercy Ministries, and that's just part of their personality and their character, that they instinctively want to interact with people in that way. And then there'll be other people for whom, life's busy and it's more of a conscious effort to prioritize stuff like this. So can you guys give us any sort of reasons why biblically these are things that we should be prioritizing? What is the biblical motivation for doing these? Pete, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of looking out for the vulnerable, looking out for the kind of the marginalized in society is just such a kind of a theme that runs right through the whole Bible. Kind of you get it coming right through in the Mosaic laws, in the kind of the Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, those books which are really hard to read and difficult to get into, but kind of like you see dotted throughout those kind of God telling the Israelites what this new society that kind of they're going to be setting up all the kind of laws, what they should look like as living as his people, and in amongst them are kind of so many instructions as to how they're to treat the poor, the vulnerable, the marginalised, and then that kind of continues right through the Old Testament in the prophets, and then kind of Jesus, he takes up the baton in the New Testament, and kind of just demonstrates so clearly his desire to kind of demonstrate his love for people, not by kind of providing for their needs, not just their spiritual needs of kind of dying for their sins, but also for their physical needs of healing them, of kind of giving them food to eat. So yeah, I guess it's such a kind of core part of the Bible that pretty much anywhere you look in the Bible, you'll see kind of God's heart for the vulnerable.
Yeah, great. Catherine, have you got anything that you would add to that?
I mean, I agree with everything Pete's just said, and it's amazing to think about what God is like. What is his character? He is a merciful God. He is a God of compassion. He's a God of love and kindness. And I think we see that character of God in some of the examples that Pete's just given through Scripture time and time again. What is he like? He has a concern for the outsider, for the vulnerable, for the needy, for the poor. And I think specifically as Christians, as the church, our ministries of mercy are part of our response to the incredible love that God has shown us in the gospel. So when we see how much love and mercy has been shown to us, our response should be a whole life response. And part of that response is that the church has a specific role still to play, not just it used to have a role to play in the time of that law in Deuteronomy or whatever, but that we still have a role to play in serving the needs and meeting the needs of some of the most disadvantaged in our society. And that includes, in Nottingham, in the city of Nottingham.
Yeah, great. Amanda, anything else that you would?
Well, Pete and Catherine have said brilliant stuff, but what you might be thinking, so what kind of law in the Old Testament? And I'm going to tell you about a law I love. And I didn't used to love it because I didn't used to understand it, but it's a bit in Leviticus 19 verse 9, and God tells farmers that when they take in their crops, they shouldn't take in their crops right to the edge of the field. They should leave some on the border. You might think, well, that's a bit dull, and I'm not interested in farming, but it's really exciting. What God was saying is, always leave some produce, because then strangers, visitors that haven't established themselves, maybe they're not working yet, they can't feed themselves, can go and pick that and can eat and survive. So that's exactly what Pete was saying, and that kind of law is repeated several times. So right from the beginning of the Bible, God was saying, be careful to care for people that haven't got a means to feed themselves and are strangers and haven't got work yet or aren't settled yet. So that's just an example for those of you that like examples. And the other thing I love in the book of Micah, chapter 6 verse 8, it goes something like this. I haven't got the verse to read out. Something like this: what does God require of me? In other words, if I'm a lover of God, or we could say now, if we are a follower of Jesus, what does God want of us? And the answer is to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So, there are, you can sum up, like Catherine said, our response to being saved by a loving God is to take every opportunity really to show his character.
Yeah, that's really helpful verse. I really love that verse, Micah. That's great. Okay, so as young people then, quite often you might have a bit of a passion brewing for these kind of mercy ministries, but it can be tricky to get involved. Quite a lot of them are, focusing on showing mercy to adults, which is great, even if you are a young person, but sometimes it's just not possible, not appropriate in the structures that these things happen. Can you guys think of either any ways that people can get involved now in ministries, or can be setting things up or preparing themselves, I guess, for a future where they're involved in these things? Catherine, do you want to offer any thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I think there will always be ways that we can find of practically showing God's love to others, and there are ways you can get involved in mercy ministry now. Like, I'm just thinking, there's a big box in the foyer at Cornerstone, which is just waiting to be filled with food for the food bank that we support, which is run by Grace Church. And that's an example that you can, week in, week out, be giving something, even if it's just small, and practical. Mm-hmm. The other thing you can do for some of the ministries that we've mentioned is you can be praying. So if you pray, don't just be praying for yourself, but how can you be praying for things that you're not part of yet, but maybe you're interested in? You want to pray for our city and the various ways that Christians across the city are trying to show God's love and serve the poor and the disadvantaged. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would say is that even if you feel you can't get involved in mercy ministry right now for whatever reason, I just wonder if there's a challenge for all of us, but particularly for young people, to think about what our hearts are like already towards those who are on the edge somehow. Mm-hmm. Because I think whatever world we live in, whether we're talking about in a friendship group or at school or in our youth groups or places that we go to, there'll always be people who are a little bit more on the edge, a little bit on the margins, who are experiencing kind of hardship in some way. And I think you don't have to be an adult yet, you don't have to have past your 18th birthday to be showing compassion to people who are in that position. So I think there's just a challenge there to be developing that kind of heart for the outsider, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, an angle that maybe we don't necessarily think about that. Actually, mercy ministries, it is an overflow of what's going on in our heart, isn't it, to have mercy. Like, we need to recognise that we've been shown mercy, and yeah, it's an expression of that. Okay, how about you, Pete? Have you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, just echo a lot of what Catherine said there. I mean, I guess in terms of specifically thinking about Nottingham, there are loads of different amazing organisations that are kind of some explicitly Christian, some not, which are kind of doing various things to kind of work with vulnerable people. So I guess my first thing would be sorry, excuse me, just kind of do a bit of research, kind of look at find out, kind of talk to people at church who are involved in mercy missions, to kind of find out what's out there, and kind of particularly causes that you care about and that you have a heart for. You can find lots of them have got like websites or kind of social media where you can kind of find out more and kind of hear updates from. So that as Catherine said, there are kind of small things that you can be doing, whether that's kind of giving food to a food bank, or maybe kind of deciding to try and raise a bit of money, doing a sponsored event, or to raise a bit of money for one of these causes. Kind of those are really kind of helpful, practical things. But I mean, I guess I really loved what Catherine said about kind of just kind of looking out for people in your day-to-day life. Again, you kind of read through the Gospels, and you just see kind of Jesus kind of he's just kind of going from place to place, and he's just showing mercy to the people that he's meeting. He's not always kind of necessarily going out of his way to find them. He's just kind of like the people that come to him that he comes across in his everyday life. He's just this kind of displaying God's love. And so just thinking about ways, and sometimes it's really hard. I kind of remember back in school, kind of the people who are on the edges of I guess maybe the cool groups at school, those who are kind of maybe find themselves a bit picked on. It's really hard kind of and then those are times where I just kind of like kept my head down just for an easy life. And so if you're one of those people who does find it hard to kind of speak up, just kind of ask God for the courage. And again, it kind of, a lot of it just starts with prayer. Just pray to God for that he'll show you the people to be looking out for, and give you the courage to kind of speak up for them.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, isn't it? That Mercy Ministry doesn't have to be part of a structured organisation. It's a way of life. It's how we go about our interactions with people. And so yeah, that's a good challenge.
You know, a good phrase is love your neighbour. So who's right in front of you, who you can love, who's not you, maybe not in your family, but someone out there who you can show love to.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about the parable of the Good Samaritan, which a lot of you know. That story that Jesus told was in response to someone saying to him, I know I'm supposed to love my neighbour, but who is my neighbour? And then Jesus told a story about somebody who, the main character of the story was someone that this young Jewish man would never have considered a neighbour. He was a Samaritan. And really what Jesus was saying is, your neighbour, who you should love if you want to, worship me, is anyone in need, actually, anyone in need. And they can be people that are really different from you. I think it's great, Pete, that you acknowledge that sometimes it is actually quite difficult to befriend somebody that everyone else is considering a bit too different to mix with, because it is difficult, and we need God's help. But I just think if we pray to God to help us be more kind and more compassionate with people different from ourselves, I think God will be delighted to help us. And as adults, we still have to pray the same thing. And if any of you are listening to the sermon on Sunday with your families, Colin talked about that, didn't he? He said church should be a place, not a club where we all hang around together because we've all got things in common, but actually a church is where you love one another because you're in God's family, and you might be very different, but you love one another, and actually that extends to outside of the church as well. I was just going to say that I became a Christian when I was 16 through a friend at school who was this kind of person. She just was great at noticing people on the edge. And I remember I wasn't like that particularly, but I really liked that in her. And so when she did eventually invite me to something, a Christian event, and I knew nothing about Christianity, I probably said yes, because I thought, I like what I've seen in you. I like the kind of person you are. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing, guys. Thanks so much for sharing your experiences and giving some of your time to chat to us today. I hope that's been helpful to anyone watching or listening. I will just give you some, I guess, starting points for starting to think about Mercy Ministry and what God is putting on your heart, whether it's for now or for the future, and maybe some ways in which you can start to prepare for things that you might have planned for you. So we will say goodbye. I wish everyone a lovely day, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks everyone. Bye.